Eagle has landed.
You're listening to American Slacker Podcast with Matthew Gertz and Jesse Landers.
Welcome to American Slacker Podcast. As always, I'm Matt.
And I'm Jesse, and today we're joined by our guest, Moxie LaBouche, podcaster, author, former burlesque dancer, and goat farmer. Thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me.
So many titles.
Yeah. Well, not all consecutively, not all concurrently. I mean, though I was for a time both a goat farmer and a burlesque dancer, and those schedules are not compatible.
I would imagine the late nights and the early mornings don't mix very well.
Yeah.
And whether you think you can just stay up for the remaining 3.5 hours till chore time or only sleep for 3.5 hours, whichever you choose, you are wrong.
Burning the candle at both ends.
And the goats don't care. In fact, if they're like, oh, you were trying to have a life? Well, I am going to kick you now.
Yeah, not fans of burlesque at all, I'd imagine. Not at all.
Well, I don't think they had an opinion about that, just about me trying to have any life outside of their immediate needs.
Very needy, I guess, goats then.
Yeah, it's just how animals are, you know?
Yep. Well, can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself? Maybe about your podcast as well?
Yeah, my show is called Your Brain on Facts, which is a weekly half hour of things you never knew. Topics ranging from the history of nursing to the origin of the Vulcan salute to the theft of Canada's strategic maple syrup reserve.
Ooh.
So yes, Canada had a strategic reserve of maple syrup, and almost Ocean's 11 style, a crime ring siphoned off a multi-million-dollar haul of maple syrup.
That's a tough steal, too. Liquid is a heavy thing to be moving around.
And they did it over many visits because they're big drums of it. So they were just going in, siphoning off a drum or two, coming back later.
Office Space style, penny here, penny there.
I was imagining Heisenberg, dude, like a Heisenberg, like Canadian Heisenberg character, just sitting there tankering it out slowly, making the numbers fudged. Dude, Canadian gold, baby. Who would have thought,
So you have all these interesting stories and facts that sort of each episode, it seems, is based around like a specific theme.
Yeah. And it'll usually be, whatever has struck me in the moment, whatever I found interesting that week. Though right now I'm doing topics that are somehow tangential or parallel to current events. Not as close as like covering the Black Plague. That's kind of on the nose. But I did an episode on people having to get creative with their recipes during World War II rationing and the Great Depression, when everybody had bought out all the flour and yeast at the grocery store.
Got to get creative. I mean, yeah, that does ring some parallels to what's going on now with people being out of work and whatnot. What were some of the more remarkable things that people were coming up with during that time?
Well, there was a lot of creative stuff. There were some things where it was surprising that it worked, like the mock apple pie, where if you don't have apples, you use Ritz crackers.
What?
Yeah. If you hop on YouTube and go to Emmy Made in Japan, it's all one word. She has a playlist of, I think they're called hard times recipes. Oh. So they're recipes from like the Depression and from times of shortage. She even made Haitian mud cookies, I think, in one episode. And apparently it works, but I guess you put enough cinnamon and sugar in it, anything will remind you of apples. But then there were recipes like peanut butter stuffed baked onions.
Whoa.
Yeah, one author reporting on it said peanut butter has nothing to say to a baked onion. But you need to get nutrition into people, and peanut butter stores well and is cheap, and onions are cheap. So we'll just smoosh those two together and see what happens.
Those are two flavors from the opposite end of the taste spectrum, though. I mean, maybe saute the onions as a side. Do a spoon of peanut butter,
like a saute sauce, like a Thai peanut sauce. That would work. But just putting a fistful of peanut butter inside of a roasted onion,
it's a bad Thanksgiving.
Better than starving, but not by much.
Yeah, right. So you're also taking these interesting facts and stories and putting them into a book.
Yes, it is my distinct privilege to now be a published author. In fact, later the evening of this recording, I am live streaming the unboxing of my advanced copies, and I actually get to hold the physical book in my hand for the first
Wow.
time. So pretty psyched. And it is also called Your Brain on Facts. And it does cover some stuff that I couldn't get into in the show because it was a little detailed, didn't work as well in the audio medium. Or, there is the mating habits of the spotted hyena, which is just, I don't want to say it's a little blue, but you got to be ready for that particular chapter.
Is this a picture chapter? Or
No, for visuals, you want to watch the Minute Earth video on the spotted hyenas. They do a really good representation there, particularly with their depiction of the female hyena's pseudopenis, which is
mock penis.
often larger than the male hyena's actual penises.
Shame.
there you go, guys.
Put them in their place, man. I like
And
that.
the females, the penis, their pseudopenis is actually a clitoris, but it's not analogous to a human clitoris because it also contains their birth canal, which means not only does the male have to get his penis inside the pseudopenis from behind, so that's some freaking acrobatics right there, but then she has to give birth through it.
Wow.
So it's basically like trying to squeeze an orange down a garden hose.
Damn.
Yeah.
So
So you see, those ones
during coronavirus was difficult.
Yeah. So, I know my mom listens to the show, so I leave some of those out. But about 2/3 of the book is stuff that has never and will never be on the podcast. So you have to get it in papery form or electronic form.
Yeah. Well, congratulations.
Thank you
And
very
That
much.
must be very exciting to be able to hold something you wrote.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty cool, particularly after a long career of terrible fan fiction to actually be a proper author for a few minutes.
What kind of fan fiction?
I don't think we need to talk.
I'd get it out of you.
I just, all the way back to Forever Night, which like one person who hears this has just lost their shit, and DM me, we'll talk about it.
There you go.
Yeah, a lot of Firefly,
Firefly
a lot of
of
Slash.
guests on that were influenced by Firefly. Funny enough.
Yeah, it had a pretty significant cultural impact considering it was only on for less than a season and the episodes were run out of order. Unlike the movie Avatar, which was like the highest grossing movie of all time until 2 years ago, zero cultural impact whatsoever.
Yeah.
When was the last time you dropped an Avatar quote into a conversation?
I'm more likely to drop a Fern Gully quote.
Tell me why they were signed
That's
for
what it
5
was.
movies. Like, I don't get it. They were signed for like an insane amount of movies. I don't know if that got canceled or not, but like, that's crazy.
There's a second one coming for reasons.
They were signed for 5. Like, it was insane. They were literally signed for a 5 like movie deal.
I'll put it out there. I've still never seen Avatar.
Dude,
You haven't missed a goddamn thing.
no, they
It
trick
is-
you with visual. That's it.
It's really pretty to look at, but so are screensavers.
Yeah, I like that.
And
I
it's
like
a lot faster, and
and
the
free,
writing's
most
better
of
on a
them.
screensaver. Just like they're after this element called unobtainium. Are you fucking kidding me? Did you not update your notes before you sent this to
Yeah,
print?
that should have been a fill in
That was that
the
should have
word.
been a placeholder, certainly.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the whole body growing situation and kind of like downloading your personality to it, like, was a whole weird scenario too. And
Yeah, but it
somehow they
was-
were able to short circuit it so that guy was permanently an avatar.
Yeah, but it was basically just Fern Gully meets Pocahontas with Thunder Smurfs.
Yeah.
Thundersmurfs.
Now, Avatar: The Last Airbender, arguably one of the most perfect television shows ever created. Netflix is making a live action version. But
Oh,
those
wow.
who are still emotionally scarred from the M. Night Shyamalan movie have no fear because the original creators of Avatar: The Last Airbender are the ones running the show.
Nice.
So,
That's-
and we're supposed to get like some backstory on Uncle Iroh, who is
Sweet.
inarguably the best character.
Now that's a series that as soon as it jumped on Netflix, I put it on my watch list. And once I'm done with going through Parks and Rec for like the 50th time, I'm probably going to jump on Avatar: Last Airbender because I've heard nothing but good things about the animated series.
How have you made it this far in life without having watched Avatar?
I was going to say the same thing. I haven't watched it either. And I know it's one of the highest rated things
You
there
guys,
are, honestly, as far as the
it's
internet's
just-
concerned.
Well, it's just really, really well made. This isn't like a cult favorite kind of thing. The writing is excellent. The character development, the characters are incredibly deep. They go through really significant arcs, the casting, the acting, the art design, the quality of the martial arts the characters are doing in their bending of the elements, everything straight A's across the board.
Well, see, now the only thing I can feel is excitement, because having not watched it, I'm looking forward to everything that I'm going to get.
Yes, you absolutely should.
Saving the best for last, I guess, right? So you said you're going to be doing an unboxing later with like fans of the show live?
Hopefully.
Cool.
Whether or not anyone turns up remains to be seen.
Well, it's hit or miss, but it's nice when it's the weekend, at least, doing those things. People are usually around. How has the reception been with the podcast from people?
Well, I've worked really hard to kind of organically grow it, not put any money into, Indian subscription farms where like, we'll get you up iTunes ranking, very good podcast promotion.
There's a lot of those offers.
A lot of those, yeah.
Oh yeah.
But you can have, a subscriber count of 100,000, or you can have 1,000 followers, of which 100 are super engaged. And I would rather have that small and really engaged number, because I've got like a cadre of people who routinely comment and send messages and stuff. And the first time I got a piece of feedback on the show, I still remember the feeling, because it made my whole day. Just like, wow, I'm not just screaming into the void.
Yeah.
I am validated.
I think that's the most rewarding part about being, a content creator in this format, especially, is like you're speaking into a mic. Like, you might not be doing a video, like, but you're speaking into a mic. You don't know what's going to happen. Like, it's you upload and you let it go, and like that first few people that are like, "This show's great." Like, you're riding such a high, honestly.
Yeah, and when you get past, only your mom and 2 friends listening, for that first episode that had 25 downloads, and now my episodes are getting 2,500.
Nice.
Yeah, well, that's over 30 days per episode, but I ticked past 250,000 downloads last month, which I was watching constantly to be able to get that screen caps, just like watching your car odometer turn over, and refreshing every single second. And damned if it didn't jump by 6.
Oh,
now I have to Photoshop it.
That's how it goes, though. I mean, it's better to have those extra 6, though, I'm sure.
Yep.
So you've been involved with a lot of other stuff. One thing I definitely want to touch on is you mentioned you've been struck by lightning.
Yeah, just a little bit. Just a little bit.
That's enough, though, to count, I think.
Yeah. Oh, it counted. It certainly counted. About 10 years ago, I was milking the goats. It was raining really hard. And what I learned from my time as a goat farmer was that whether I try to go out early and beat the rain, or try to wait it out before I got to do the evening milking, I'm going to end up in the hardest part of the rain, the heaviest rain. So just go out on the usual time. And one of the goats was refusing to come out until I turned off the sky water, which they thought was within my power. So I was standing there with my hand on the wire fence when the loudest crack you ever heard in your life sounded like it was 3 feet over my head. And as I was falling into the mud, I had 3 distinct thoughts inside of an instant. Stupid electric fence. The electric fence has been unplugged for a month. I think I've just been struck by lightning. And what had happened, thankfully it wasn't a direct hit, but what had happened was the lightning had hit the house, caught it on fire, and then dissipated out through the ground to the wire fence that I was holding on to. I couldn't open or close my hand for a little bit. I couldn't do arithmetic in my head for about 3 weeks. My logic center was almost offline. Like, I had to move my soap making business to the temporary apartment, and I had the workshop full of equipment and boxes and the empty truck. Workshop full of equipment, empty truck. And I didn't know what happened next. I didn't know what was supposed to happen next.
Yeah. Until
one of my helpers said, "So you want us to start moving the boxes first?" Or like, that's the thing we're doing. Yes, do that thing, please.
Wow.
Yeah. So I have memory failings to this day that I attribute to the lightning strike. So I'll get like halfway through a fact and then realize I'm missing a lot of the details, because my brain is like an encyclopedia, but all the pages have been torn out and scattered around the room and are being shredded by squirrels.
You got to piece them back together when you need the information.
Yeah, a lot of the files are 404, and people are like, "Oh, you research for the podcast every week. You must be really smart. You must know lots of stuff." And I'm like, "I'm sure I do somehow, somewhere. I don't know where it is though.
It's in there.
It's not. It's not where I left it."
Well, that's crazy. The amount of like physical and mental effects that something like that had, even from not taking a direct hit, but from the I guess what is it? It's when you said it dissipated through the ground, came up and hit the fence.
So I only got part of it, but the part I got was plenty.
That's crazy. I'm glad you're around to tell us this story.
Well,
that's insane.
I mean, did you go unconscious from it? Like, it had to have been that
like
overwhelming,
a little
right?
bit, like a little bit, like maybe just for a sec,
like a little bit of light and a little bit of unconsciousness.
Maybe just for a sec.
Wow, that's man.
Oh, and you said the house caught on fire.
That was kind of a nuisance. Well, it didn't burn down. We try to stay positive. We say it burnt up. And it wasn't even my first fire in this house. So this one, at least we know, was caused by the lightning strike. The first fire, I believe, was caused by a 15-year-old purebred Himalayan cat who decided she wanted to be where the oil lamp was. So the oil lamp had to go.
Had to go on the ground.
In this case, onto the floor, yes.
Classic cat move.
Yeah, the week before Christmas, naturally, because somebody has to get burned out of their house the week before Christmas. And then the lightning, because it started a fire in the blown-in cellulose insulation in a wall, and that stuff just smolders and reignites like crazy.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, so we were even trying with the garden hose to try to keep it down because it seemed small, but it just would not go out. So yet again, I got to move out of the house and they got to tear it down to studs. The plus side is I live in a 140-year-old house. The first fire, it had to be brought up to code for them to do the work on it. So I'm like, cool, upgrade. This fire was actually beneficial to me. So no more floor-mounted outlets, push-button light switches, cotton-wrapped wiring, or plaster and lath walls.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds like me and Matt grew up in the Northeast, and some of the houses that were super old, like 1800s and stuff like that.
Yeah,
my house is in Northeastern Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Yep. A lot of old houses there, man. Oh, they're fun to deal with. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. My family's house in Pennsylvania was a 200-year-old former stagecoach way station and hotel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Damn. It's crazy the amount of history in the buildings in that area of the country.
You don't talk to me about history right now. I live in Richmond, Virginia. It's the capital of the Confederacy, and we're just now starting to get our shit a little bit together.
Yeah. Well, here's to hoping that you guys come all the way towards like California modernity, you know?
Yeah. Well, we have this great big broad avenue lined with very expensive houses and trees. And it's called Monument Avenue because every other block there is a giant brass statue of a Confederate general.
Oh,
apparently we didn't get the memo about the war ending. We just refused to accept that we lost. And I'm saying we just because I live in Virginia, not because I in any way espouse the beliefs of the people who erected or have campaigned to keep those statues. But last week, our governor said that the Robert E. Lee statue, which is the biggest one and the one people have been gathering around to protest every night, is to be taken down as soon as possible.
Oh, wow.
And then the Richmond City Council voted unanimously to remove the other 9.
Wow.
And,
that's huge.
Well, it's a topic that would keep coming up, but would get shot down immediately. And I was wondering if I was even going to see this be fixed in my lifetime.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the statue seemed like even in other southern states as well, that seemed like a huge sticking point. At least in the past news cycles when they've come up. It's a very staunch from certain community members saying, let's keep this. And then a whole ton of people are out to go and get this thing out of my town.
Yeah. You're like, it's our history. Well, this isn't history. This isn't remembering. This is veneration.
Yeah.
This is idolatry.
Yeah. Yeah. We only give statues to people that did, good things.
We have literally put them up on a pedestal. We have literally put them on a pedestal. Yeah. So then people are suggesting things that could go up in place of the Confederate generals. Cool. And Richmond is the home of guar. So a lot of people have been suggesting Odorous Orungus is the only natural choice to replace Robert E. Lee. And I'm like, I don't hate the idea. It would need a water feature because there has to be some liquid spewing out if water is involved.
We're gonna add some red dye.
Totally.
Something. But the red dye, if you're lucky, it's when they're using the white. That's not.
If anyone's ever been to a Gwar concert, you'll know exactly what we're talking about here.
And those who are unfamiliar with Gwar are very, very confused. Because when I first moved to Virginia, I saw Gwar on a sketch comedy show on MTV. So I thought they were made up for the comedy show because they were so ridiculous and outlandish. And the sketch was Gwar will sacrifice your daughter on stage, and I'm like, oh, they're silly. And then like 10 years later, I'm like, shit's real. Well,
I've never actually got to see him. My sister's godfather, Nick, he loves them, and he says he's kept his T-shirts from all of the concerts. I don't know where he keeps them, probably in a biohazard bag or something. But he's always espoused that it's the best concert that he's ever been to. Like,
yeah, I mean, they don't hold back at a Gwar show.
They break that wall. They bring the crowd into the show.
Yeah, but if you like Gwar, there is some crazy themed metal bands out there like Mac Sabbath, which is a McDonald's metal band.
Okay.
And there's an all Ned Flanders metal band.
I love them.
It's awesome. Like O'Killy Dokilly.
O'Killy Dokilly.
Yeah, they're awesome. Hell yeah.
So speaking of performing, you mentioned that you had done burlesque for some time.
Yeah, about 7 years.
What was your experiences in that? Along with, I think we have to mention George R.R. Martin approved burlesque show.
Yeah.
That's something to talk about.
A friend of mine took me out to a burlesque show that he had tickets for, and I didn't know burlesque was still a thing. I thought that went out shortly after World War II. And I saw a performer doing an act to Menomina. Okay. As a big pink fuzzy Muppet with big googly eyes with eyelashes on her pasties. And the front of her G-string, she reveals at the end, is a mouth, and it sings along with the end of the song. And I just looked up at that and said, I have to do burlesque. This is the best thing ever. And being super nerd, immediately was doing nerdlesque. Pretty clear portmanteau there. Which is how when Game of Thrones came on, and of course we were immediately taken with it, myself and my husband, who performs under the name Dante the Inferno.
Cool.
Because when you start doing burlesque, which the word burlesque means to twist, your brain starts to translate anything you're looking at into a routine. My mother fell and hit her head while in the hospital recovering from a knee operation because she didn't ask for help to get up because she doesn't want to be a bother. And I go to visit her, and my brain's like, okay, so you come out on stage with your right arm and your left leg in a cast. And I'm like, brain, we don't have to make this into burlesque.
Not right now.
Yeah, just I'm doing something. Give me a break. And so we did we did a Game of Thrones show. I was the Mountain in year one because I was the smallest cast member. With my little plush horse who gets his head cut off and my Oberyn Martell doll with the raspberry jelly donut face. We made it into a small regional tour. One of the other performers later performed at a con that George R.R. Martin was doing a panel at, and he saw the show. She was doing her Red Woman, her Melisandre routine, and he asked to speak to her afterwards. She told him about our little regional tour, and he gave us his official blessing and his direct phone number. Wow. Which I never worked up the nerve to call because I didn't. I was so afraid he would answer and not like an assistant. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to bother him.
He's like in the middle of something.
I could have drunk dialed George R.R. Martin, you guys. I just never pulled the trigger. Oh, and so, he invited us out to his theater in Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's this single screen Art Deco movie theater that he saved from demolition and had restored. And we got to do the act on the 3 whole feet of walking space there was at the front of the thing there. You got, as my husband's favorite YouTuber says, you got to piss with the cock you got. And
there you go. I like that one.
Solid Canadian wisdom there. And then he met with us afterwards, and he's just genuinely a really nice guy. Kind of quiet, which you'd expect from someone who's written 80,000 pages of nerd material. And everybody needs to stop asking him when the book is coming out, or
Yeah.
what's going to happen if he dies before it's finished.
Oh my God, what
He's
a
an old
question.
man.
What
Leave
a
him alone.
dick question, first
Yeah.
off. Like, how rude. I mean, if you appreciate the man's art, like, when you die, like, what if you leave us hanging, man? Come on. Come on, man.
Or just
like,
the assumption that he's going to die soon because he's got gray hair and he's overweight.
He's overweight, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean,
Like,
the guy's a genius,
your
obviously.
mortality, but what about that book?
Yeah, basically.
It's-
he's taken to just answering that question with the finger.
It's
you
a
know.
cr- the crux of
Good
creating.
on him for that. Seriously.
Yeah.
And
Dude.
my husband did a routine because normally in any kind of burlesque based on a work of fiction, you perform as characters.
Mm.
He's done 2 different acts, my husband, as George R.R. Martin.
Oh,
So
Mm.
the first act, he was rolling around the stage in an office chair, throwing pieces off a chessboard. So just killing off all the characters
Yep.
while he strips.
Yep.
This one was based on, it was on one of the late night talk shows. So like, we cut now to George R.R. Martin working on the book, and it's a guy dressed as him jumping on a backyard trampoline. So we got one of those little aerobics living room trampolines, little round ones. And so he did his strip as George R.R. Martin with the beard, the hat, the padded belly, while jumping on a trampoline to Todd Rundgren's Bang the Drum. I don't want to
Nice.
work. I just want to play on the drum all day. Which he said was the single most nerve-wracking experience of his life. Because in the routine, he has a heart attack and then resuscitates himself, and and the man's watching him do it.
Yeah. You're performing as the guy who's sitting in the
who's
audience.
there. Yeah. Well, he's got a tinted booth in the back, so nobody can tell if he's there because he just gets mobbed anytime the public sees him.
Mm.
But we're hoping in the last book there will be a character named Dante, but spelled a little funny, that dies horribly.
Oh my God, what an honor!
That will be his legacy.
Can you imagine? Oh,
I'm sure people beg to be killed off in the book by him. Just
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Go down to more. That's how you're immortalized within Game of Thrones, is your death scene. Really, I mean, that's what everyone sort of remembers.
Nobody forgets Oberyn. Nobody.
Nope.
Or the Red Wedding.
Or the Red Wedding.
Oh, man, that was a heartbreaking incident for the internet, man. The internet was fucking too hot that night.
See, now Matt and I probably, I think I can speak for both of us. We didn't read the books though, so we're not true.
Yeah, I was a show nerd.
Into it.
show
I was
nerd.
definitely.
Yes, I like that. Show nerd.
It took me a little bit to get into it, but a lot of my friends had been watching it at the time, and they sat me down and said,
Tied you to the chair.
Yeah, pretty much. They're like, you're going to watch the first couple episodes because then you're going to be hooked. I'm like, all right.
Like the modified Ludovico, they just prop your eyelids open.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it worked because I dug it from there on out.
Yeah, our first MC, a performer called Ego von Hubris, who is a 30-year-old man who, if he shaves, looks like Maisie Williams. So he did half the show as Joffrey and half as Arya. He lived in Maine when the books came out, and he said that when he got to the Red Wedding, when he read that, he threw his book out the window into the snow and didn't go looking for it until spring. He just was like, I am fucking done. Are you kidding me with this? Yeah. So we had to do Joffrey, and then switch to dead Joffrey halfway through Act 1. And then Arya, this was the same year Dante did Jaqen H'ghar, the Faceless Man, and he sheds a bunch of faces onto the stage. And, so Arya picks one up and then comes back out on stage with white contacts and fumbles her way around. Good times. Good times.
It sounds like it had a lot of thought put into the different scenes, for sure.
Yeah, when it worked splendidly. The flip side of that is when it failed spectacularly.
Oh no.
Oh, we played some gigs in just some shithole venues with no audience, because you got to coordinate with someone who lives in that city, with a performer in that area, to be like, where's a good place? Do you have contact information for them? Because finding the right venue is really, really super hard. And getting an email back or getting them to return a phone call. Knowing what the liquor laws are and where you can perform, because it varies by state and even by city. Like here in Virginia, you cannot have hard liquor and the removal of clothing. Unless you are you can be an art gallery with a bar, but you can't be a bar with a stage.
Wow.
So, it's really tricky.
There's
so you've got to know all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'd get to cities to find out that the performer didn't hang the posters we sent. One just dropped them off at the venue. They were still sitting, basically the whole stack was still sitting there. Like, are you kidding me?
Like, how are people going to come if they don't know it's happening?
Yeah.
Like,
So there's just a lot of
it sounds like
so
the same
many dressing rooms
struggles-
that smelled like piss. So many dressing rooms that smelled like piss.
It sounds like some of the same struggles we hear from smaller bands.
Oh
that
yeah,
tour.
it's road life. Road life is the same whether you are a burlesque or a drag queen, a metalhead, a comic. It is sleeping in the car, brushing your teeth at the rest stop, and yeah, road life is pretty much
Road
the same
life.
across the board.
Comics, musicians, burlesque dancers. The only time I have to say that I got to see burlesque was in Vegas. I mean, I feel like that's a good exposure point for a lot of people is when they're in Vegas because there's a lot of burlesque shows that are happening. And Matt, you were with me, weren't you, when we saw the
Yes,
zombie
sir.
burlesque show?
I'll always remember. I talk to the people about that all the time. That was
It was
quite a
awesome.
show.
It was a lot of fun.
It was a
Is
lot
it
of fun.
Rob Zombie or Zombie Zombies?
No Rob Zombie, unfortunately. That would have been kind of cool too.
Because
I don't know if I wanna-
there have been I know of 2 all Rob Zombie shows that have happened.
I'm sure he's a big horror fan, and then I'm sure burlesque fits into that because the theme of like horror into burlesque is so amazing as well.
You think he's got it in the hips to
Ooh.
like really work on stage? Or
I bet you he's an agile man. I bet you he is.
More
definitely
flexible than he
thrust.
looks.
Yeah, I bet he's a thruster.
But yeah, no, it was it was. I wouldn't say it was all burlesque. It was probably a little bit more of a variety show than a burlesque show
Magic,
specifically.
illusion. Yeah,
There was
a
there was a guy doing like pop and locking. Essentially, it was like weird sort of like body movements. He was on America's Got Talent too. So it was a variety of it, but it was all sort of tied together with this theme of zombie burlesque. Which was a cool idea. And it seems like you said before, you can almost take anything, even like an everyday thing that you're doing and turn it into a theme for a burlesque show.
Yeah. Well, like there's Rule 34. If it exists, there's porn of it. And Rule 34B, if it exists, there's burlesque of it. Because I have seen burlesque of every kind of a thing, but it sounds like the show that you saw is actually more in keeping with the origins of burlesque when it began in the vaudeville and British music hall tradition in the middle of the 19th century. And slowly over time, the dancing girls became a more and more prominent part. Stories vary as to when the stripping actually started. There is a fabulous old movie that's almost impossible to find called The Night They Raided Minsky's, which is about one of the big burlesque halls in New York. That is the supposedly true story of the very first striptease with some really good classic Jewish comedy writing in it, like really, really gold. But yeah, so the strippers then became a more and more prominent part until they were basically the whole show rather than the singers and the magicians, the comics, the chorus line. But then in the 1960s and 70s, topless bars, strip clubs, porno theaters, things of that nature, it was easier, cheaper, faster to see naked women than going to the burlesque hall, and people just weren't going for a Tuesday matinee anymore. And it basically died out. But then people started bringing it back around like the early 2000s, maybe even the late 1990s.
Huh.
Yeah, but it was 2012 before I heard that it was still happening.
It's interesting to follow the sort of patterns of it, of like sort of ebbing and flowing with the times and do you think it's a response to like the society at the time?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's both being influenced by and then trying to influence, because it's deeply rooted in satire and mocking the social mores of the day, public figures, things of that nature. So, you think of the baggy pants comics, would do that type of comedy. And there is a style of burlesque called neo-burlesque, where it's really more about the statement that the act is making than the fact that there's clothing removal involved. And I've even seen routines that are considered burlesque that don't involve nudity. this is not neo-burlesque, but I did a routine as Super Grover that I almost forgot to incorporate any stripping because I was just so happy dressed up as Super Grover. I was having a good time. I've seen routines that have literally brought people to tears. I've seen people in the audience crying, and it's good if you can make them laugh. It's great if you can make them cry. Oh yeah. You really feel like you've done your job if you can get the audience crying.
Oh, they felt something then for sure.
Yeah.
And especially if what you're doing is coming from within, if you're really drawing on something from your life. So there are a lot of women who do routines about body shaming they've experienced or overcoming abuse. Dante has a routine to the Imagine Dragon song Demons, where he deals with visible symbols of things he's been through in his life. And that always gets people crying. Him too. He's usually, because it's an emotional catharsis, so he's usually tearing up by the end of it. Well, the thing is, he's the crier. I'm kind of the butch one. But when we got together, he had a sewing machine. I had 2 chainsaws.
Sounds like a match made in heaven.
We really fit together very well.
And I'm getting vibes of like interpretive dance almost. In a way, sort of incorporated into this style of art.
Yeah, I think a little easier to understand though, maybe, than some of the interpretive dance that I've seen. Of course, interpretive dance is usually used as a joke. It's usually used as a punchline, like the dude's landlord in The Big Lebowski. So maybe I didn't mean to disparage it. There might be some amazing interpretive dance out there. Listeners, you can at me on Twitter at Brain on Facts Pod. Let me know. Link me to some interpretive dance that you think will really set me straight.
There you go. Or maybe it was my use of the word interpretive. It seems like dance is sort of at the heart of burlesque in a way, along with sort of sending forth whatever message the person performing it is looking to send to the audience.
And you can always tell which performers have been doing, have dance lessons since they were 3. And then there's me, just then the rest of us. And sometimes
you're dancing more than me and Matt. I'm sure you're better than us.
Dancing is, we're still using the word dance very loosely here. There is a fabulous word, balter. It is a verb, to balter, which is to dance joyously, though without skill. So at best, I was a baltering burlesquer.
I've been baltering for years.
I was going to say, also known as confidence. I mean, man, I can't help but admire that.
And, there are boylesquers as well. For you gents who feel like you need an additional creative outlet.
Is that the official term?
Yeah, typically. They're usually
boylesque.
called boylesque. We'll stick lesque on anything.
I'll go Batman, Matt will go Robin. We'll put something together.
Why do I got to be Robin, dude?
He's cooler, man.
No, he's not.
You can pull off.
Lie to me.
You can pull off the spandex.
Don't you lie to me now? My God.
Okay, first you're going to have to think a little bit harder than that, because there's been a lot of Batman and Robins.
I was going to say,
shucks.
I've seen a really good Jay and Silent Bob burlesque routine. The guy doing Jay, his Jason Mewes impression was exact.
Jay Mewes, man, what a guy! I love that guy. Quite a story himself, coming over addiction.
So that's another creative outlet for us to explore with American Slacker.
All live nude American Slacker.
Oh my God, no
Patreon exclusive.
YouTube took us off right away. They took us off a minute ago talking about it. We're gone already. Now talking about your podcast, I wanted to get into the idea. How did you go from like burlesque and now you were all of a sudden like into a facts podcast? I mean, I love your show. Thank you. You deliver facts. It's an education podcast without being an education podcast. It's going to make you go to sleep. Like there's something about it that just, you deliver it quick. You deliver it in a way that it's interesting and fun to take it in. And I just feel like that's such a unique change from burlesque to like facts like that, It's
a less abrupt change than goat farmer to burlesque dancer.
As I was saying that, I was like, I'm totally, skipping the whole fact of lightning struck, goat farming, burlesque. Yeah. I mean, maybe that lightning strike just gave you all this power. I don't know. That's what it came from?
No.
No? Okay.
I didn't even get one of the cool lightning scars. I didn't get anything out of it. No, but I have always loved the interesting facts, the weird facts, the thing you never heard about this particular topic, which we're pretty steeped in right now, getting our history corrected. And I was a dyed-in-the-wool TV addict as a kid. Like Mike TV and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory's got nothing on me. So that was my punishment whenever I would act up. And being one of 6 kids and having ADD, I was constantly acting up. So I'd have TV taken away. But an exception was made that I could watch the news and educational programming. And this was in the 1980s, before Discovery Channel and that stuff. So I was going to watch TV regardless. And so, I started watching documentaries and stuff. And that helped to kickstart my natural curiosity. But the trouble is, I would have all of these facts and then not anywhere appropriate to put them. Because, when I'm scanning people's groceries at the grocery store, they might not want to hear that avocados have huge pits because the seeds used to be redistributed by a prehistoric ground sloth that the tree was in a symbiotic relationship with. They just want me to ring up the damn avocado and let them leave. I have derailed arguments, not in a good way, but just like turning both of the arguing parties now onto me because I felt like now would be a good time to explain the meaning of the term devil's advocate. I just can't stop myself. It's out of my mouth before I even hear it. So my husband got into listening to podcasts and he got me into listening. My very first one was Unorthodox, which calls itself the universe's leading Jewish podcast. And Jews and Gentiles alike should definitely listen to it, especially if you've always been curious about Judaism, but not like 100% sure what's going on. Definitely check it out. And I'm like, okay, no, this is pretty cool. Because I had a lot of the misconceptions people have before they start listening to podcasts. Like, how do I find it? How do I know it's going to be good? How do I find what I like? I thought I had to like stop and listen to it. Didn't even occur to me. I could just, listen to it while I'm
do your thing,
doing gardening. Yeah. And I thought that a podcast would be a really great way to hit the release valve on these facts. But the trouble is writing a 7-page script each week is just putting more shit in my brain, which just gets mixed up and confused with the stuff that's already in there.
It is a lot of information.
And I will forget wholesale stuff that I have already covered. And like, I'll go back and like, what the hell is this episode even about? And I'm only 110 episodes in. Like, I don't even remember writing this. It's like Stephen King directed Maximum Overdrive, the movie where the Earth passes through the tail of a comet and the machines come alive, pretty subjectively. It's the only movie based on one of his books that he ever directed. He was so high on cocaine so much of the time, he has no independent memory of doing that.
Oh my God.
Oh, wow.
It was in the 80s, I'm guessing, right?
Yes, it was definitely. It was one of those movies that came on TBS like way late at night on the nights that they weren't running Beastmaster.
Mm-hmm.
So it was either Beastmaster or Maximum Overdrive.
Oh, man.
That has to be difficult, though, after, like you said, over 100 episodes. Have you gotten close to covering the same thing and been like, wait, no, I'm having flashbacks. I definitely talked about that avocado thing.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I do revisit things, but to expand on them. Like I'll mention, we touched on this back in episode whatever, but here's more of it, because it's impossible to exhaust a topic. There is always more. And anything can be interesting if you stop and look. Like, you ever look at like a little small thing, whether it's a bug or a little rock, at a glance, it doesn't look like much of anything. But the longer you look at it and the more detail you see and the more interesting it becomes. My husband was flipping through YouTube, because YouTube's basically our TV at this point, and he saw like an hour-long video about the making of Johnny Quest, the old Johnny Quest cartoon show. He's like, how do you could talk about that for an hour? I'm like, dude, I would do an hour just to start with, okay? Because I'm going to talk about whose idea it was and the creation of the show and the animation process and what country they outsource it to. And then I'm going to do the backstory of all the writers. And no, I could do an entire podcast show about Johnny Quest. Because if you keep looking, there will always be more to find. It's my life philosophy lesson for you to take away today, gentle listener. If you keep looking, there is always more to find.
Inspiring.
Never let curiosity die. I like that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that's the smartest thing you're going to hear today. Thank you.
Like George Costanza going out on top.
I was going to say you should have said welcome to your TED Talk, but you really did a TED Talk.
I did it.
I feel like that's
TED
something
Talk.
we need to touch on as well.
It was about burlesque, needless to say.
Needless to say, yep. We both watched it, and we were
very well performed. I love
Yep.
I love the delivery as well in poem form.
Well, that was a matter of necessity. Because I failed one of the interviews to get a full spot. The second lady was not impressed with me.
Oh,
and
how is the process?
Well, I don't know if it's the same all the time.
Okay.
I don't know if it happens the same as it happened to happen in Richmond.
Okay.
Because this was TEDx RVA, which is what we call Richmond, Virginia. And one lady who's involved with it, that's a friend of the photographer I always work with, he put me onto her, And she did the initial interview and she had some great ideas for me, but I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to talk about or how. So when I talked to the second person who was higher up in the organization, she was just not impressed with what I had to say. And I'm like, God damn it. But then they did this open mic to win effectively a 3-minute spot in the TED Talk. And a lot of people got spots to do it. It filled up really quickly. And I fought tooth and nail to get it because it was like you vote by text and they give you the number like at the very end of the night. And of course, everybody's texting everybody they've ever known, being like, you need to text this number right now. And so I managed to tie with another person and they let us both have a spot. But I did it in rhyme to be especially memorable.
Nice.
So I have this Seussian presentation on the general history of burlesque. And that event was held in the Carpenter Center, which is a big theater here in town. Like Chris Cornell played it a few weeks before he passed away. Big names. The big stuff happens there. And it was the only time burlesque will ever happen in the big room because my theater was 2 hallways down at the other end of the building, the theater I usually produce in. Mm-hmm. So if only that one time there was burlesque on the main stage.
Well, that's awesome. And it looked like a huge crowd there.
It was capacity. Well, I mean, the tech costs are $15,000 a day. So that's why burlesque will never happen in the Carpenter Center. It's not because they don't want us, because the theater complex is run by a big multinational corporation. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to bother asking them if we could do our shows there because I'm like, they're going to just tell me no. But I did, and they agreed to a meeting. And the regional general manager for this big multinational company met me at the elevator. She said, "We're so glad to have you here." I'm like, wait, is this on lock? Because I've gotten a lot of no's in the last 2 weeks. And it turns out her grandfather was a musician in the pit in a burlesque hall.
Wow.
And he also played the symphony, but he told the family burlesque is paying our bills.
Damn.
So she had this really special place in her heart for us. And she and the production manager, who I called our handler, would have to fight the board of directors and the people whose names are on the theaters to keep our shows there. And like they wanted to put the sandwich board out front that says this performance contains nudity, and they refused to do it. Like, it's a burlesque show. They know it has nudity. I'm not putting the sign out.
Yeah. That's do you still run into that a lot with it being Virginia specifically?
Virginia is at the very tip of the Bible Belt, and it's real conservative. Richmond particularly has this mindset of we don't like the status quo, but don't you dare suggest changing it, because that's tradition. And we just want to whine. We don't actually want. Until very recently, we didn't want any actual change. Apparently, we're more passionate about useless stuff that doesn't matter. But I got out of producing and performing. Well, I got pretty burned out producing because it's a lot of hard work. And if it goes really well, that's super. If it goes badly, you've just asked people to drive in from all over to perform for you in an empty room. And now you got to go to the ATM. Yeah. And you got to empty out your bank account to at least pay them something while you wait for a pittance from the theater for your cut to come by check in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's difficult.
Yeah.
Is there any, idea of pivoting to some of the new media for burlesque? Are there burlesque performers out on, say, like Instagram Live is one thing that comes to mind?
Well, you got to do all the social medias if you're a performer of any kind.
Right.
So that didn't change when I shifted from burlesque to podcasting.
Yeah.
And with the lockdown, the coronavirus lockdown, a lot of shows are trying to do online shows so that they can still perform and keep their business going and keep their livelihoods going. Because I know so many people who within the last 5 or 10 years were finally able to transition to full-time performer, not having to have a 9-to-5 job. And then this shit happens.
Yep.
And a lot of people I know are just scrambling. There's nothing to scramble for. There's nothing to do. So they've tried to move to an online medium. It's not, as far as I've seen, getting the traction that they need. So my challenge to you, ladies and gentlemen, my gentle listener, look around on the Facebook for some burlesque in your area. Support the local show. It's going to be almost as good to watch on the screen. You know what? Hook your computer up to the TV. Watch it in the living room. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Turn the lights off. Get a stiff drink. It'll be fabulous. Make a night of it.
There you go. That'd be a good way to spend the weekend. Supporting some local or independent burlesque performers.
Yeah, whether they're local to you or not, you're definitely still essentially supporting a small business.
Yeah.
A very, very, very small business.
Well, one more thing I wanted to ask about is just how are the goats doing?
I sold them 5 years ago because I couldn't stand the sight of them anymore. Well, I'd been running the farm effectively by myself for over a decade. My first husband had, over the course of a few years, 4 spinal surgeries.
Oh, wow.
But he didn't even do the stuff he could do to help. And after doing it by myself for 11 years, it's like, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
And people who've experienced burnout will know that feeling of just looking at the thing you used to be so passionate about and being like, I just don't give a shit anymore how this turns out. I really don't.
Yeah.
And you might say to yourself, I'm going to go away for a while, wait, see if I miss it and then come back. You will have lost so much momentum. It will be impossible to get going again. So nothing lasts forever. When you get burned out, let it go. Don't fight it. Burnout happens. Don't torture yourself. Let it go.
Yeah.
Especially within an entire farm.
Oh,
that's
all them goats.
Yeah, because it's not like the burlesque, which I could just be like, I'm not going to book any shows for the next 3 months. The goats are still waiting to be milked at 6 a.m. They could give a damn.
Yep. Well, this has all been quite a lot of interesting information.
Quite a journey.
That's what I would expect from someone delivering all these interesting facts on a normal basis.
Well, I thank you. Would you like to hear one of my favorite facts?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. The second longest place name in any English-speaking country is the Welsh town of Llanfyr-Chogui-Gogera-Chondrova-Sant'Ocilio-Gogogo. It is 58 letters long. There are 4 L's in a row because it's Welsh. Llanfyr-Chogui-Gogera-Chondrova-Sant'Ocilio-Gogogo. It is only beaten out by a New Zealand town. You Google for this name and hop on YouTube and you can hear people saying it. It's like more than one complete line of text, and I have yet to practice enough to be able to say that one.
I was waiting for it.
I'll get it. I'll get it. I'll have it for the next book.
I'm impressed by the Welsh one enough.
Yeah, man.
That took doing.
That's awesome.
I had to break it down into little chunks and write it down phonetically. It's like ultramicroscopic silicovolcanoconiosis.
There you go.
Which is
that was the one I learned that
term.
one in like middle school because
you had a better science program than I did, and so that's the longest medical term. The longest non-medical term in the dictionary is anti-disestablishmentarianism, which is, of course, a good one. And I need to actually look up the one that I need to take us out on a high note here. The act of judging something to be worthless. And this is a word that some will argue is not a word because it's a recently coined word. And I do have to read this one to get it right. And I'm still going to take 5 tries.
Okay.
Floxina sine hira. Floxina. When you hear it, you'll understand why I'm having so much trouble. Floxina sine hilipilification. That was correct that time.
Wow.
Floxina sine hilipilification, which is the act of judging something to be worthless.
Wow.
And for those curious about the spelling, that is FLOCCINAHUCILIPILIFICATION.
Jeez. That's brutal. Whoever designed that was a bad man or mad woman.
I think it actually came out of out of a tabletop RPG. I think it came out of like a tabletop RPG session, possibly a real play podcast. But yeah, that does you can kind of get a whiff of
D&D
of nerd off of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, some words you didn't know that you needed to know.
Man, just like the facts you provide on your podcast, Moxie, we are big fans. We are continually going to be fans of your podcast and listen. Its production value is amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. And that's just me and free recording software. And
all I've got to say, don't tell the people.
Working wonders.
I'll tell you what, it sounds amazing. It sounds like very, very high value production and
top notch.
Everybody needs to check it out.
My mother was in radio in the 60s and 70s.
That explains why you have that voice. Okay.
That's also why I have the mellifluous radio voice. This is Moxie LaBouche from Your Brain on Facts.
No, you have a smooth voice. Like, it's captivating. I like it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, you should hear me in my off hours. I basically just sound like a 10-year-old boy. But yeah, so Mom taught us all how to immediately drop into our radio voice. I don't think it was ever a deliberate lesson. We just picked it up like little animals watching the mama animal. And so if you called our house, regardless of which daughter answered, you would hear a radio voice.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to like each pronunciation of every word. Like, it's very, very smooth, easy to take in. We can't help but enjoy
You're
it.
Hanging on my every diphthong.
I'm sure your book is just as interesting to read. And one more time, what's the name of the book? Where can they get it? When?
Well, it comes out on June the 16th. If you're hearing this before then, it is available for pre-order. The full title of the book, I can't believe the publisher went for this, is Your Brain on Facts, Things You Didn't Know, Things You Thought You Knew, and Things You Never Knew You Never Knew. That's the title. Takes up the entire front cover. But you can, I recommend first off, try your local booksellers. From a safe distance, of course, because they need your love now more than ever. It is available on Amazon, of course, because everything is. But there is also a company called bookshop.org, which is like a clearinghouse for indie booksellers.
Nice.
So you can still get it technically from a small business, from a local bookseller. And this is against my own self-interest, it's like $1 cheaper on Bookshop than it is on Amazon. But if you go to yourbrainonfacts.com/book, it'll port you over to the Amazon page.
Awesome.
There you go.
Awesome. Make sure to check her
out. If people wanted to follow the show or you or anything else, where would they find you?
Well, as soon as you've finished binging the entire American Slacker catalog, which I hope you have by now, just search for Your Brain on Facts on your podcast listening app. You can visit yourbrainonfacts.com. Follow me on the social media, Facebook and Instagram at Your Brain on Facts. And Twitter is Brain on Facts Pod, because God forbid Twitter give us enough letters.
We feel you on that.
Preach.
I was one letter short of the show name.
Oh,
it's like
too close.
My fucking branding.
Too close.
Podcast.
Oh man, podcast.
No, it was Your Brain on Fact.
So be Your Brain on Fact.
Oh, it's like, do I leave it that close?
What would
do
the one
do Brain
be?
on Fact, or so it's Brain on Facts Pod.
There you go.
Well, people, make sure to check it out. It is Slacker approved. You see the seal right there on the screen.
Boom. Stamped.
Boom. Stamped. And Moxie, thank you so much. We'll have to do this again. It was a lot of fun, and we've barely touched the surface on the complex character that I feel you are. And we're definitely going to do it again.
Just because you are a character doesn't mean you have character.
Oh, I mean, well, you got a little bit of both, so you're out of that. Okay.
Be careful with that joke. It's an antique.
You got to break it.
Don't. It's fragile. Fragile, man. All right, people. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And until next time, that's it.
There you go.
We smoking America. We passing America. I'm mapping America. I'm second America. We talking America. We blazing America. This is fucking America. We second America.
This has been American Slacker Podcast. You can reach the show by searching American Slacker on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Reddit, or send them an email to americanslackerpodcast@gmail.com. You can download and rate American Slacker on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and all other podcast platforms. Visit the show's website, aspodcast.com, where you will find every episode, official merchandise, and links to their Patreon if you would like to support American Slacker.
We smoking America. We passing America. I'm mapping America.